Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. How's it going out there? It's going to be a short show. Nothing much has happened. Donald Trump said he's tired, and he just stopped passing things, tearing things up, throwing tantrums. It's all stopped. The Democrats, they also just said they're gonna. Actually, they kind of did say they're tired and they're gonna give up. That part is true. Yeah, not much of a show. No, I'm kidding. Of course, we essentially started a new war. I guess it's not against a new enemy, but basically a new war has been begun, and you know our mainstream media, which acts like, oh my God, Trump's done something, but they're pro-war, so they're like, but okay, sure, why not bomb Yemen people? And hello to Jafar Khan, who's joining the show. Hello.
Hello. How's it going, Lee? Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. I hope you can make this funny because I'm tired. I think I was projecting. I was saying Trump was tired. I think I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm gonna try my darndest.
Yeah. So well, I mean, we'll just dive into it, and we'll do all the good promo stuff later. Just click thumbs up, say hello to everybody, throw a comment in the chat. But let's do it. Trump has decided to bomb the ever living shit out of Yemen. Because why not? Easy punching bag. And the UN has agreed with this. Innocent civilians in Yemen do not count. They're kind of freebies. So,
I mean, right here in the article, it says the Houthi rebels. I mean, you could see from the pictures that it's mostly women and children.
Those are the Houthi rebels, right? Mainly 6-year-olds, I think.
Yeah.
Really, most of the leadership I've found, Houthi leadership, is 6 to 7-year-olds.
Yeah, you know, when they're in their terrible twos, it's a real rebellious age.
It's true. It's true. But here is, let's see, Yemen's a Yemeni affair analysis. Hussein al-Bukhari, I think. He was speaking about this, made a lot of interesting points. So about these latest strikes, which have killed dozens of people already, and the U.S. had. It's not that the U.S. hadn't, been striking Yemen, but not heavily recently. But let's listen to some of what he has to say.
Decided to launch these attacks now. Has there been a recent rise in Houthi attacks in the Red Sea?
Of course, there was no attack against any United States ship, neither commercial as well, neither any battleship. And since the United States and
So no attacks against the United States. Let's get them.
The Prosperity Guardian from the beginning of Truce of Gaza has stopped targeting Yemen. Yemen has stopped its attack against UK ships and as well United States ships. And the only
as Israel has had a ceasefire in Gaza, Yemen has stopped striking U.S. and allied ships. So seems like you could just say, why don't we just keep not striking them, and then you wouldn't have a problem. But no, of course not.
They have actually announced a few days ago that they will resume the attack against Israeli owned ship. That's why here they believe that this latest attack actually is not, as Donald Trump have said, to protect the United States commercial ship or United States battleships. It's actually to protect Israeli ships, because the United States has taken a huge part in the war against Gaza and in the genocide. And we remember that Yemeni army, when they were launching attack against Israel in occupied Palestine or either against Israeli ships in the Red Sea, they haven't actually targeted any United Kingdom flagship or any United States flagship, and they only started those attacks after United States has declared war through that Prosperity Guardian, which we call it here in Yemen is the genocide guardian that came to attack Yemen to protect the Israeli and to lift the blockade against the Israeli.
So his point, I know sometimes a little hard to understand, but his point is that this is really just a policy to benefit Israel. They have not attacked U.S. ships recently. They haven't even gone after UK ships. They basically stopped all attacks as the ceasefire was ongoing, but as Israel has continued their blockade of all food and aid into Gaza, Yemen announced they would begin again targeting Israeli ships. Yet the U.S. says, oh, well, Israel equals the United States, which many people know, but it's the U.S. pretends that's not true.
Mhm.
So the U.S. is now attacking Yemen because they're telling Israel they're not going to allow Israel to have safe passage.
Yeah. What a crazy coincidence that Yemen stops attacking Israeli ships when the bombing in Gaza stops. I just don't know how their anti-Semitism works sometimes, but who am I? Who am I to try to figure that out?
The Houthis have said at least 31 people have been killed. Trump's national security advisor said Sunday that the strikes had successfully targeted multiple Houthi leaders. But of course, also, whether that's true or not, killed lots of innocent people. But they don't care whether they kill innocent people. We know that from Israel. We know that from the behavior of the United States over the past many, 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 many years. And I'm going to come back to, I'm going to say it again and again, sociopath test. We need a sociopath test for these leaders, all right? First day, you don't pass, you're not in there. Because everyone hates a sociopath.
Yeah.
there's no sociopath fan club that I get that people may like people who are sociopaths, like people may like Elon Musk, but it seems like you could get agreement from like 90% of the population. Yeah, give him a sociopath test. If he doesn't pass it, he's not our leader. He's not making.
I think the test should be that if you announce that you want to run for president, you just get thrown in jail.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, no, I think I've said before that every candidate for president should be very opposed to running. They're just like grabbed off the street by someone and told
they should be begging just to go back to their normal job where they do something useful for society.
Because the problem with every presidential candidate is they want to be president, which is a real psychotic thing to do. Let's just hear a little more.
But I believe that those latest attack against Yemen, which had actually focused on civilian area, they have targeted several homes across Yemen, which resulted in 32 deaths and more than 50 Yemeni civilians were injured. The number of them are women and children. This actually is sending a clear message to the Yemeni that the United States is standing with the Zionist state of Israel, and they will keep targeting and attacking Yemen to stop Yemeni from blocking the Red Sea in front of the Israeli regime. And I think that the next step that Yemeni army might take is by resuming attacking against United Kingdom commercial ship in the Red Sea, and as well against the United States commercial ship. And I believe they might launch a huge attack against any battleship belonging to the United States.
Which, of course, is saying that rather than stopping these attacks, which is Trump claims he's going to do, he's actually furthering them. He's creating attacks against U.S. and U.K. ships by bombing Yemen when they have not been attacking U.S. and U.K. ships.
And with all these civilians that were killed in this one attack, I wonder, has Israel changed the landscape of what is acceptable, what you can get away with? Because if you compare what Israel has been doing in Gaza, just the numbers wise, obviously all U.S. wars in the Middle East are terrible and recklessly kill civilians. But if you look at the numbers of civilian deaths in Gaza, of children death in Gaza, it's completely off the charts of other wars in the Middle East. So I wonder, has Israel had an effect to where now, what we're gonna, is it gonna inform how we attack Yemen?
In all due respect, I think we have been genociding people for a long time.
Yes.
So how dare you not give us the credit where credit is due?
You're right. I formally apologize to the United States government.
The U.S. has killed, Brown University cost of war said 4.5 to 6 million over 20 years of the global war on terror. That's just the so-called war on terror countries. But I did hear your caveat, which is the speed at which it's being done and the percentage of children killed, which I have talked about a lot in average modern war. Obviously, it'd be wonderful if there were 0 children killed, but in your common modern war, which I wish it was not common, you see somewhere around 6% of those dead are children. In Ukraine, I think it might even be lower than that. maybe even much lower. Some of the numbers in Ukraine are hard to come by, but it is definitely not above normal. In Gaza, it's above 40%. It's like, 45% of those murdered are children. So it is another world of destruction and death rain down on children. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right that in terms of the speed and the percentages, Israel trying to normalize genocide in a new way.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we're going to see any sort of like change in MO. I mean, we are talking about Donald Trump here, so it's really like it's not looking good. I'll just leave it at that. That'll be the end of my expert analysis.
Just every time I pause, you just go, "It's not looking good, Lee," and then we move on.
Yeah. That's why I get paid the big bucks.
Well, I'll give you in terms of how bizarre like Trump's behavior is, where like 75% of the time you're like from my point of view, you're going, these are horrible decisions. This is a horrific, may borderline illegal, sometimes outwardly illegal. I'd say that's right now bordering around 75% of the time. And then every once in a while, I think it's just like he's just napalming everything, like you in the U.S. government and everything else, and so you'll get some collateral damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, that's great. And I'll give an example of that. Don't worry, we'll get back to Trump sucks in a minute, but I'll give an example of the collateral damage where you're like, this is great. Voice of America, the long-time U.S. global propaganda network, Trump has just nuked it, just completely shut it down.
That's awesome.
This sounds like something that would be done by like some surly leftist president who somehow got into office, and the Republicans in the liberal world are spasming at the idea that
there was some sort of glitch in the voting systems and
that U.S. propaganda is being shut down. But no, this has been done by Donald Trump. And here is liberal New York Times freaking out about it. The title is, "As Voice of America Goes Dark, Some Broadcasters Are Replaced by Music."
Sounds great. I love music.
For more than 80 years, not even propaganda music. What are we doing? For more than 80 years, Voice of America. See, now if I were to finish this sentence, if this were Lee Camp Mad Libs, it would end with, "For more than 80 years, Voice of America has been pushing propaganda across the world." Mm-hmm. But this is New York Times. So for more than 80 years, Voice of America transmitted the news into countries, many of them authoritarian, where reliable sources of information about the outside world were often hard to come by. But luckily, Voice of America was there. Now those broadcasts, long viewed as an important part of, and again, if I were to finish the sentence, U.S. propaganda, an important part of U.S. efforts to promote democracy and transparency overseas, are flickering out.
Hilarious.
This is why people need to have media literacy and understanding of the, like, I don't know, the maneuvers that are happening by both sides on both parties. You have a lot going on here. You have Trump in office, who is certainly trying to be authoritarian, certainly wants a unitary executive, certainly wants to make it so it's his, everything is his say. No judges have any say. No media has any say. And so that's his behavior. Then you have Voice of America, which is a U.S. propaganda machine. Like, that's not even a debate. Like, everyone other than the New York Times knows that this is a U.S. propaganda machine.
Yeah, especially if you just take the literal definition of propaganda, there's no argument that it's literally propaganda.
Yeah. And then you have it being covered, the fact that Trump's shutting it down being covered by the New York Times. So they're trying to make it, he's shut down this wonderful news outlet that has just always delivered the news to other countries that couldn't get the news.
Telling countries the truth about their own democratically elected leaders, like no other source can.
And the reasons as to why, if I had to guess the reasons as to why Trump did this, it's probably that Voice of America had a story 2 years ago that was really not favorable to him.
Yeah.
would be my guess, because Voice of America, I don't know if I've ever heard anything from it, but I'm sure it has some liberal hosts on various shows, and so probably some hosts on Voice of America were calling Trump to account for something last term, and so top of his list was get rid of the goddamn liberal Voice of America, when in fact it's a U.S. propaganda tool.
Yeah, I similarly, it's not part of my daily rotation, but I imagine, Voice of America to be like center, like economist, like center left, but trying to like posture itself like the Economist does as being like, unbiased.
Right. I
And
mean, it's different from the New York Times. Like, the New York Times is a U.S. propaganda outlet. It also is very negative about Trump. So that's what it is.
yes. Yeah, but I would just say, I would imagine daily, like the Voice of America is trying it like doesn't like quote unquote editorialize as much as New York Times. Like, it won't give its quote unquote opinion pieces, even though they are opinion pieces. You know what I mean? But yeah, like any other news outlet that at any time is critical of Trump, they're going to be in the crosshairs. So I agree. Like, it's obvious that that's exactly what happened.
So here's the last thing. Much of Voice of America's content is produced in Washington and then transmitted to a network of affiliates worldwide, meaning CIA satellite stations, with most of Voice of America's workforce locked out. At least some of its radio frequencies in Asia, the Middle East, and elsewhere went dark or began airing nothing but music, employees said. Anyway, one thing we can cheer on right now in the midst of horror.
And I think the people of Asia are probably doing just fine without Voice of America.
It turns out many Asian countries have gone dark as well. They just shut off their lights with Voice of America.
They're like, what's the point? And they're jumping off of roofs. They're like, what's the point? How are we gonna live in this world?
We can't go on. We don't know what's happening in the world. So
yeah, I think they'll be fine.
Okay, but let's get back to the Trump's horror show. He's now using a 18th century law that's been used like 3 times in America's history, I think, to deport Venezuelans. And he's claiming that the Venezuelans he's deporting are at war with the United States, and that's how he's able to use this law. And you have to realize that the reason he wants to use this law is because it means that you do not have to go in front of a judge to deport someone. You don't have to show any proof. You don't have to convict them of anything. You can just grab someone, say, you're Venezuelan, and ship them out of the country. If you use this law that is not meant for this at all. Now, the law was racist when it was put into play, but it's even more racist when it's used like this. It's basically like, you're Venezuelan. You're on a plane because you're at war with the United States. Of course, there are thousands, I don't know how many Venezuelans in this country, many of them legally, but or documented. And I'll just go out on a limb here and saying, I think all of them are not at war with the United States.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how like easy someone who wants to be an outward open fascist in the United States, how easy it is for them, like how the infrastructure is all still there, like all these old laws, like it's like if we had like all these mines laying around one day, and it's like, hey, should we maybe like make an effort to disable all these mines that are gonna lie around for all these years? And it's just like, no, I think we'll be fine. I think we'll just leave them there and nothing to worry about.
No, rather than mines, I'd say grenades. And then they're just laying around. And then when a certain asshole who's slightly different than the last asshole gets into office and starts throwing them at people, everybody goes, where'd all these grenades come from?
There you go, yeah.
Hey,
you're not supposed to pull the pin out of that. You're supposed to keep the pin inside. That is the honorable thing to do.
Don't use our remarkably racist law that we've never taken off the books from 1798 against people. Yeah, and it also that, along with the mass deportation by the Biden administration, the fact that Harris ran on immigration as a right winger, basically saying she'd deport more people than Trump in many ways. The the Democrats laid down a big red carpet and said, "This way to fascism, my good sir," claiming the United States is being attacked by Tren de Aragua. Train de Aragua, a Venezuelan prison gang, which I'm sure is just very powerful in the United States. President Donald Trump on Saturday invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to order the rapid detention and deportation of all Venezuelan migrants. So every Venezuelan migrant is now, according to Donald Trump, in this very specific prison gang.
Holy shit.
Women, doesn't matter. To order the rapid detention and deportation of Venezuelan migrants suspected of being members of TDA, treating them as wartime enemies of the U.S. government, because we're at war with a Venezuelan prison gang that has infiltrated the United States.
Yeah.
The president argued in his proclamation that members of the Venezuelan gang are conducting irregular warfare. Yeah, it's so irregular, it's not happening. That's how irregular this warfare
They're
is.
conducting war by living their lives and raising their children. So irregular.
By being Venezuelan and being alive, that is war against the United States. I love the phrase irregular warfare, and undertaking hostile actions against the United States. The Alien Enemies Act is a wartime authority that allows the president to detain or deport the natives and citizens of an enemy nation without a hearing and based only on their country of birth or citizenship. So you have to prove absolutely nothing except that the person is Venezuelan.
Yes, it is on paper racism. It's right there.
It has been invoked just 3 times in America's history, each during a major war: War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And during those times, it was also racist. It was just like the Japanese internment camps are not looked back on as smooth move, FDR and others. They're looked back on as like this horrific moment in American history where we just were so racist. We were like, "You're Japanese, round them up." Federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration's ability to use the Alien Enemies Act on Saturday evening, but Trump continued. So the judge ordered the airborne planes that were already airborne carrying those migrants to return to the U.S. Trump did not do it, and he sent them to El Salvador. And the El Salvadorian president, who's a big Trump butt licker, tweeted out like, "Whoopsie, they're already here," with like a smiley face or a laughy emoji. Don't you love it? There's the difference between fascism now and World War II. It comes with a laughing emoji.
Yeah,
that's nice. And the judge, there's now a hearing, I think today, as to why the Trump administration decided to ignore the judge's ruling.
Hey, I don't know if that's allowed. Does it say in the rule book that he's allowed to do that?
Yeah. You got judges and various people across this country going, well, you can't do that. No, our system is garbage in many ways. And as I've made this point before, that the unitary executive, the idea that the president is powerful above all else, like, a lot of Republican presidents have furthered that, but a lot of Democratic presidents have either furthered that or never stepped back from it. Like Obama did not get into power and go, "I'm going to give all these increased power tools back to the people that, all George W. Bush's abilities that he grabbed up, either lawlessness or right on the edge there of whether it's legal or not. I'm going to give all that back." No, they just kept going down the path.
I'm going to not implement an illegal secretive assassination program that will include U.S. citizens. I'm going to not do that.
And by the way, for those keeping score at home, still to this day, Obama has deported more than Trump. We'll see. Trump may get there. He may have the record here by the end. But
I believe it. I believe in Trump.
Okay. I wanted to do a quick moment. Either today, is it today, maybe, or yesterday? Is the anniversary. It's been 22 years since Rachel Corrie was murdered by the Israeli military. And I suppose there's still some people who don't know this story out there, but she was an American protesting for Gazans, protesting for Palestinians in Israel and in Gaza, and they crushed her with a bulldozer and killed her. And these are some. They have some words here from her letters. She was, let's see, 22 years ago today. She was killed trying to protect a Gazan house, a family's home, from Israeli destruction. Here are her words from her letters home. I couldn't even believe that a place like this existed, but even more, can you believe there are children here? Forget the fear. They tell me that at night. Forget the fear. I am ashamed that I am scared for my own body and dying anonymously inside a house in one of the most populous places on earth, where children die as martyrs of the occupation, which we pay for quietly without ever knowing their names. She means literally pay for, like U.S. government taxes. This has to stop. I think it is a good idea for us all to drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop. I don't think it's an extremist thing to do anymore. I still really want to dance around to Pat Benatar and have boyfriends and make comics for my coworkers, but I also want this to stop. I just think we all have the right to be critical of government policies, any government policies, particularly government policies which we are funding with our tax dollars. So when I sound crazy, or if the Israeli military should break with their racist tendency to not injure white people, please pin the reason squarely on the fact that I am in the midst of a genocide, which I am also indirectly supporting and for which my government is largely responsible.
Wow, I'd actually never heard her words before, and those were very, very powerful, well said words.
Yeah, powerful words, and just incredibly brave of her. And, sadly, the Israeli government ended up killing her. And, there's very few that are willing to put themselves between a force as powerful as the IDF and those, their normal victims, which are Palestinians and Gazans. And, but yeah, just wanted to take a moment to remember Rachel Corrie, which
Yeah.
I would imagine the mainstream media is not doing a lot of.
No.
Okay, now we can get back to the funny.
Are you sure about that? We'll see.
We'll see. Someone has put together this video of Marco Rubio answering a question.
Okay, wait, that's funny.
That's kind of funny, right?
It's a good premise.
Yeah. On Unredacted Tonight this past week, I called him Secretary of State and dashboard good luck charm, Marco Rubio. And so I'm going to have to, for those listening to the podcast, which, by the way, those listening to the podcast, you're the true heroes. All right. These people that show up to the video, they're just, I don't it's the podcast people that matter. But I'm going to have to pause it and read what's on the screen, because they kind of, they clown on him by the writing on the screen. And so I'll be doing that whenever they put something on here, but it's pretty funny.
Be open to an agreement with Hamas?
So the journalist says, would the U.S. be open with a deal with Hamas to get American hostages released?
Hostages released separate from the Israeli
Separate from Israeli hostages.
hostages, like including the Donna commander.
Well, I think our
So they're asking, like, are we doing a deal with Hamas just to get Americans out without worrying about Israelis?
priority always, as the U.S. government, is always.
So they write on the screen that he's realizing at that moment that he's about to say our priority with the U.S. government is for U.S. citizens. But you can't say that. Like, we are so beholden to Israel that you won't hear a U.S. official in the Trump administration or the Biden administration say that we care more for American citizens than Israeli citizens. Like,
Mhm.
they're not even allowed to say that, which with any other country they would. I even think
Exactly. They say that all the time with other. It's a given with other countries.
yeah. So, and it says on the screen, like, he backtracks because he's a puppet.
That we care about all the hostages. We want all the hostages released. We believe they should all be released.
And then this is something I like to remind people of, but very few other people do, that when he says hostages, there's 10,000 Palestinian hostage being held. And of course, he's not referring to those, because when apparently anyone in U.S. media, anyone on the right, anyone on the left, well, not left, sorry, liberal Democrats, anyone says the word hostages, that means Israeli hostages. Palestinians do not count as human beings, as hostages, as anything really. So he shows the number.
Okay, and that, by the way, we talk about hostages. We're also talking about bodies. Okay, and these trades are being made, and they're ridiculous trades. We're talking about 400 people for 3. These are nuts.
So
I like the Photoshop work.
I know. So he's claiming that it's insane for Israel to make a deal where they release 400 Palestinians for 3. You know, what a terrible deal. He's saying it's nuts. But it's nuts that Israel has, they're saying on the screen, that 400 Palestinian hostages, including children, to release for 3 IDF soldiers. So one of the sides of this is actively participating in a genocide soldiers. The other side of this is 400 women and children that are being held in prison. Like, there's a difference between those two things.
And on top of that, you see the condition these people are being released in. This is think about what we're talking about here.
And so then, of course, they show the condition of the Palestinian hostages, who are generally, not 100% of the time, but generally in far worse condition than Israeli hostages.
Mhm.
Then they also show the Israeli hostages, which many of them do not. They certainly don't look like they've been tortured.
I mean, we're sitting around as the world sort of accepting that it's normal and okay for you to go into a place, kidnap babies, kidnap teenagers, kidnap people that have nothing to do with any wars, that are not soldiers, that are not anything.
Yeah, and then they're showing all of the children captured by Israel. Israeli soldiers kidnap an infant, children. And by the way, a lot of this went on well before October 7th. I mean, Israel had 5,000 Palestinians in prison prior to October 7th. Most of them without charges, or if they were charged with anything, it was, looking at an IDF soldier wrong. And, then they're showing on the screen the articles of Palestinian children, how horribly they're treated while detained. Israeli Knesset passes a law allowing imprisonment of Palestinian children under 14. Israel Knesset also debated as to whether it was okay for Israeli soldiers and Israeli security to R-word prisoners, and they came to the conclusion that yes, it's fine. Terrorizing a generation, Israel arresting Palestinian children suspect to starvation and beatings. These are all being posted on the screen.
All Palestinians go through military courts in Israel that have a 99% conviction rate.
I think I'm gonna check you on that. I think it's like 99.6. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't forget the 0.6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost 100% because, and I showed a BBC clip once on this show of a very rare moment. Maybe it wasn't BBC, but it was a British journalist. Very rare moment where an outside journalist was allowed into one of these courts. And he said afterwards, I got to see some of it. Almost none of them got longer than 60 seconds in front of the judges.
Yeah.
So even if you had a good case, do you think you could present it in 60 seconds where this judge who basically just says convicted, like is going to change their mind? I don't think so. So yeah, they can.
And on the flip side, I don't know if you saw this story, Lee, but I think it was Times of Israel article where a few days ago there was a man, Israeli in Jerusalem, I believe, who was a part of a mob chanting death to Arabs. So kind of some subtle messaging there. And they were surrounding an Arab worker, and this man shot him in the street. And he was put in jail, but an Israeli judge intervened and released him and was like, no, just put him in house arrest, and didn't give any sort of a reasoning. Didn't even try to like come up with an argument of like, oh no, his you know, he accidentally pulled the trigger and accidentally said death to Arabs. He just, no, just let him go.
Right.
So that's what we're seeing on the other side of the legal system in Israel.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of George Galloway's assailant who tried to kill George Galloway.
Whoa.
And this is back in, I think, the early 2000s. I can't remember whether he stabbed him or he hit him with an object over the head, but George Galloway had a severe scar across his skull, and the guy was put in prison for a certain amount of time. Oh, and I think the attack was while George Galloway was a member of parliament. The guy was put in prison for several months or maybe a few years. And I think during the attack, he actually had a T-shirt on that said like "Friends of the IDF" or something. Like this was an Israel supporter, and he was attacking George Galloway for being opposed to the Iraq War and for speaking up for Palestinians, etc. Anyway, he's put in prison for a little while in Britain, and then when he gets out, he's flown on Israel's dime to Israel, and he's given like a hero's welcome.
Wow.
To Israel.
And taking them and putting them in tunnels for almost a year and a half.
So now they're showing articles of Palestinians who have been imprisoned for years, locked up, a 22-year-old. So, you know, all this was going on prior to October 7th. This is kind of standard operating procedure for Israel.
Like if this is a normal exchange, this is a normal thing that happens, this is an outrage. So they should all be released. So I'm not going to comment on what we're going to accept or not accept, other than all of us. The whole world should continue to say that what Hamas has done is outrageous.
How about, for those of you listening to the podcast, there's a middle finger emoji on the screen. Yeah, what Hamas done is outrageous, but what Israel's done is, you know, just totally rational and fine. I mean, even on October 7th, killing hundreds upon hundreds of their own citizens, totally rational, not radical, not radicalized at all. Totally makes sense.
And I love how he didn't even answer the question at all. He just kind of like stuttered for a few seconds and then was just like, well, Hamas is that. I'm going to use that in my day. Like next time my girlfriend Kelly asks me if I farted, I'm going to be like, look, Hamas, what they're doing out there, that's what we really should be focusing on right now. Who farted, who didn't fart, you know, any one of us could have farted. But
what I'm hearing from you is you don't care what Hamas has done. And so you could say this to Kelly. You don't care what Hamas has done. And so therefore you're trying to change the subject to farting. Like, I think we need to stick to the subject here.
Yeah. You think the smell is outrageous? I'll tell you what's outrageous. Hamas is outrageous.
Okay, so that's the always amazing Marco Rubio. Let's see. I want to get to the pathetic deflation of the Democrats in any sort of pushback against Trump in just a second. But I wanted to remind everybody that episode 4 of Unredacted Tonight is already out. It came out last Thursday. And if you haven't seen it, it was a banger. And I'm not biased. No, but I covered the corporate power grab of investor state dispute settlements, but I also covered Cuba, and Marco Rubio and Donald Trump have put new sanctions on Cuban doctors. They're going after Cuban doctors. And so I had a segment on how awful Cuba is and just how much we need to crush them for daring to have longer lives than us and like 0% illiteracy and all these horrible things. So if you haven't checked that out, I hope you will very much go and watch it. It's at, you can find it at linktree.com/Lee Camp. All my other stuff's there, as well as all of my podcasts and everything else. So linktree.com/Lee Camp. Go check it out. Share it with friends. Let them know. We're already 4 episodes in. And when are you coming on Unredacted Night, Jaffer?
Oh, please. I would love to anytime. And I've seen the clips you've been posting on Instagram, and they're very good. And I hadn't heard that story of sanctions on doctors, but that's hilarious.
Oh yeah, they're trying to crush Cuba's doctors program, where they ship doctors around the world to help other countries. They were
it's really an evil Cuban propaganda program where they heal the sick of other poor nations, and it needs to be stopped immediately.
Totally. Because they apparently had a big impact on Ebola when there was the Ebola outbreak a few years back, and I think that's just horrific. That's just straight.
You know what's another name for free healthcare? Irregular warfare.
Irregular warfare is what they're up to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the other one, because I was going to say Trump may start deporting Cubans and saying they're up to irregular warfare, but another kind of funny aspect, if you're to find some humor in this, is that the Venezuelans who are in America, some of them, I don't know what the percentages are, voted for Trump. The ones that could vote, because some of them are right wingers who came to America because they believe the propaganda in Venezuela and they despise Venezuelan socialism. So they come to the U.S. going, U.S. is land of freedom, and I'm going to vote for this awesome guy Donald Trump because he hates Venezuela, and I hate my home country of Venezuela, at least under Maduro, and yet he's rounding up some of these people and kicking them to El Salvador. And if you were to do the same thing with Cubans, you'd have the same impact, where they'd be rounding up right-wing Cubans who hate Cuba.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it's just so tragic of just like to buy into this obvious propaganda of just being like, look, he's not racist. He just hates people who are here illegally. I'm here legally. He definitely cares about the difference between the different types of brown people that are here. Trust me, you guys. Otherwise, you're saying that he's racist. That would be crazy.
He just loves law and order.
Yeah.
The show and the policy.
Yeah.
All right. So Trump put forward his horrific budget, which, let's be honest, Trump did not write the budget. He's not spending time on 1,000 pages of. It was written by right-wing goons who, want to make sure this country is as far right-wing as possible. I went through a bunch of the details on the last show, maybe on Friday, was it? About cutting, food stamps, cutting school lunch programs, cutting. Don't know where Jaffer went, but cutting all kinds of, they're talking about cuts to Social Security. That's not in the budget yet, but so a bunch of horrible cuts that just harm the people with the least among us, which is who they're after. And the Democrats had a chance to fight back against this, and they I don't know if Jaffer can hear me, but if you can, you should probably log off and log back on. Anyway, the Democrats had, because they don't have enough votes. They don't have over 50 votes in the Senate, but they have enough to filibuster, to stop it from going through, because the Republicans need 60 votes. And so several Democrats had to side with the Republicans in order for this to get through. And sure enough, they did, including Chuck Schumer, essentially the head of the Democrats. So they completely caved. And welcome back, Jaffer.
Sorry about that. I'm back. I don't know.
They completely caved. And here's the New York Times saying, absolutely ridiculous. Democrats seethe at Schumer for backing GOP spending bill. Now, the New York Times in their own propaganda is doing something very important here. They don't want America to hate all the Democrats in power. They want them to only hate the 10 who voted for the Republican bill. So the New York Times is reminding you to love all Democrats except Chuck Schumer and the whatever 9 or 10 others, which of course I think is dumb. You're still siding with one of the two parties of the corporatocracy of the fascist state we have here. So I disagree. But anyway.
I love how my computer spazzed out for a second, and when I came back, like in theory, I wouldn't know what you're talking about, but it was very easy to. Oh, Democrats being cowards, got it. Didn't need to be.
And we're
caught up
in.
at all. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, if you didn't hear this, they could have blocked Trump's budget, the Trump and the right wing's budget, because they had enough votes to block it. Unless several Democrats sided with the Republicans for this garbage, utterly atrocious bill. And sure enough, they did, including Chuck Schumer.
Mm-hmm.
And Chuck Schumer, by the way, in prior like statements up at the podiums and stuff, has been casting himself as the center of the resistance against Trump. You know, it is me and the Democrats who are fighting back against Trump. Oh, except I'm totally going to vote for this budget.
Yeah. I mean, he might as well be. We're talking about the Democrats. So this is just like, chef's kiss, like primo the Democrats.
Democrats have the backbone of, those inflatable used car guys that go up and down.
Yeah.
That's basically what they are. You just turn off the little fan and they just.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The backbone of an earthworm or any sort of invertebrate animal we could use that as an example of a Democrat's backbone.
Many Democratic lawmakers continue to express deep frustration at Chuck Schumer on Sunday for having broken with most of his party to allow a Republican spending bill to pass, as the Democratic base increasingly demands stauncher resistance. Oh, really? Stauncher than the little paddles they held up during the State of the Union thing? Just say, we got paddles. Mr. Schumer, a New York Democrat and the Senate Minority Leader, joined 9 other Democrats in allowing the bill to come to a vote, which averted a government shutdown. But, of course, if there were a government shutdown, it would look bad for Trump. And his argument was, oh, well, we're trying to fight Trump in the government level, and if we shut it down, then we'll be helping Trump. No, I don't think that would help Trump. I don't like.
It doesn't even make any fucking sense what he's saying. Like, what the fuck? And New York Times just completely uncritical reporting on this. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and Chuck Schumer's a piece of garbage. And like most people realize that if you wanted to, if corporations, the richest people in the country wanted to capture the American system, all they'd have to do is have a couple, although now it's like most of them, but a couple Democrats who are basically Democrat in name only and don't actually stand for the things listed on the Democratic planks. And all you need is like a handful of those. And it would mean that the right wing of whatever this garbage is would have the votes to do anything they want. And that's what they've done. I mean, these people, many of these people they call themselves Democrats in the Senate, like, Angus King or whatever, or is he the independent? And Fetterman and all these people, like they're not. It's like, what does being a Democrat even mean anymore? There's like 5 that maybe sometimes stand for something, but it's just been so egregiously captured that
I mean, if you're a corporation, it's like, oh, if you want to capture U.S. government, you got to capture all the parties. And it's like, oh my God, all the parties. I mean, what is that? That sounds so intimidating. It's like, well, it's 2.
Yeah,
oh, you should have said that.
Yeah.
All right. It's not so bad.
Not so hard. But yeah, this bill was something I was saying that while you were taking your break there to go chug a beer, was that I went over the budget, some of the aspects of the budget on Friday, and it's got cuts to school lunches in there, it's got cuts to veterans, it's got cuts to basically anyone who's really having a tough time in this country.
Cuts to getting hugs from your grandma.
They cut the Hug for Grandma program. That's out completely. It's now shin kicks for grandma. It's a new one they've introduced.
Yeah, new DoD program they're introducing.
All right, let's get to why exactly. So I've covered the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, the one of the leaders of the Colombia protest, involved in peaceful protest, and yet that's illegal now in our country. And so I've covered it, but I was wondering, and I knew it'd be something awful, but I was wondering why the U.S. government arrested him and immediately shipped him to Louisiana. Like, they arrested him in New York. They brought him to a cell in New Jersey. And then the following day, they flew him to Louisiana.
Anytime someone's like, we got to get him to Louisiana immediately, it's probably not going to be great.
The only time that's good news is if you're 21 and one of your friends wants to go to Mardi Gras.
Yeah. But only that part of Louisiana.
Yeah, nowhere else.
Yeah.
So here is the answer as to why they're so desperate to get him and keep him in Louisiana. Besides sheer brutality, there's a clear strategic reason that ICE agents quickly whisked Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil out of New York City last weekend. It's the reason he was first transported to New Jersey, then to a private detention center in Louisiana. The reason is Ravi Regbir, whose court victories against the first Trump administration regarding his own retaliatory detention made New York a far less friendly forum for the government. Their intent is to intimidate, to create fear among people who don't agree with them, Regbir told The Intercept. But basically, they wanted to get him into a favorable court system.
Mm-hmm.
Like Khalil, Regbir is an activist in New York City who was targeted for deportation over his speech during the first Trump administration. Like Khalil, he was quickly flown to a far-off detention center, in his case, Miami, as his family, friends, and attorney frantically tried to locate him. And like Khalil, whose attorney worked through the night to file a rapid petition for his release, Regbir quickly challenged his detention and deportation. He won a ruling in 2019 from the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals that affirmed non-citizens' right to challenge targeted deportations as unconstitutional retaliation under the First Amendment. The Second Circuit's decision in his favor is a powerful shield, not just for Khalil, but also others the Trump administration has vowed to detain and deport. But that decision is only binding law within the Second Circuit's jurisdiction and not in states which fall under different federal appellate courts, such as Louisiana. I'm surprised they didn't fly him to Gitmo.
Yeah, like literally.
This is another aspect of authoritarianism. You don't care what the courts say, and you will either ignore them or just use some loophole to get out of what the courts are saying. And so in this case, they flew him to Louisiana. But what would stop the Trump administration from just arresting people, flying them to God knows where, Gitmo, Puerto Rico? How about one of the 900 military bases we have around the world in black sites? Like you just fly them wherever you want.
Yeah. I mean, a private detention center in Louisiana is probably as close as you could get to a black site on U.S. continental soil.
Yeah. Avoiding the Regbir precedent is precisely why ICE moved Khalil so quickly. His attorneys argued in a motion to bring him back to New York. Two Department of Homeland Security officials recently told The Atlantic that Khalil was moved to Louisiana, quote, to seek the most favorable venue for the government's arguments. So they admitted it. Like, they're admitting we flew him to a place where we know that the judges there are deep up our own asses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because again, like Trump is, they're just gonna say it. So
yeah, it really is a unique difference between them and prior administrations.
Mm-hmm.
Just their willingness to announce their corruption and their illegality.
Yeah.
In just about every way.
Yeah.
Like even the Tesla ad that he did on the lawn of the White House the other day, it was just like, yeah, don't enrich yourself with the White House. I'd like to let everyone know I'm buying a Tesla.
Yeah.
And Tesla for when you want to to celebrate the empire. There's a photo of the White House Tesla ad they did. I believe that's called a native ad. That's called a nativism ad. But yeah, he literally just did a giant ad for Tesla because Tesla's stock has been kind of collapsing due to there's some people, I won't name names, some people across this country who don't like driving neo-Nazi cars. And so it has bothered some people. I don't know why. I can't fathom it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, but that was a hilarious clip. I mean, it sucks how funny Trump can be, how much entertainment value his fascism does have sometimes. Just, you know, him like, Tesla, this computers, they're not ugly. I love them. I love them.
Lot of good humor and entertainment value. But he's also trying to make it he's trying to make protesting Tesla illegal. He's calling it domestic terrorism. And The Intercept is asking them what demonstration against Musk isn't domestic terrorism. Like the protests he's pointing to have been like people sitting in front of Tesla lots. Now, I would argue of the things to protest right now, you probably have much better things to go after than a car brand. But that being said, I think they have a right to protest. And the idea that should be illegal or be somehow called terrorism, or maybe they'll call it critical infrastructure. That's the other thing. Like when they arrest pipeline fighters and call it critical infrastructure and therefore it's terrorism. I also wanted to show this is Tesla's stock recently. So there's still, it's not like they're suffering. They're still one of the highest stocks in the world. So let's not pretend that they're going bankrupt tomorrow. But they've basically lost all of they almost doubled the stock price since Elon Musk got into office, since President Mump got into office. So they doubled their stock price during that time, and now it's come back down. I think it's actually lower than this chart shows because this is January of 2024. And the orange line is up against Toyota. So Toyota's was lower than it is back below it. And this also shows how ridiculous Tesla stock is, how like fake it is. Tesla's stock has had many moments where it was worth the same as the next 4 car makers' stocks combined, even though Toyota, the biggest car maker, makes 10 times as many vehicles as Tesla. Because the stock is they call it a meme stock. The stock is based on basically just people talking about it. It doesn't, and it also goes to show how meaningless the stock market is, how it's not based in reality. You know, it's based in, garbage. It's based in how many tweets Elon Musk puts out.
Layers of horseshit to dive into here.
Layers of horseshit. That's I almost named the show "Layers of Horseshit."
Dive in.
But yeah, so the Tesla stock price is now back down to what it was like just before the election, after having nearly doubled, I think. So. But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap up there for today. But Jaffer, please let everybody know where they can follow your podcast.
Yeah, it's called Cops the Podcast, KAWPS. Just a police news podcast. We cover the horrifying, the absurd, the hilarious. Me and another comedian, Ashton Womack, covering all the underreported police stories going on every week. There's a lot, and we try to keep it somewhat funny and entertaining.
Thank you so much for being here, Jaffer. I just want to remind everybody the new schedule is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Wednesdays is at 8 p.m. Eastern. Monday, Friday, stay at 3 p.m. Eastern. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the live streams. And of course, Unredacted Tonight comes out every Thursday. One of these weeks, I'm going to drag Jaffer onto it. Comes out Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Jaffer, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks, everyone listening.
Yeah. But I just want to remind everybody to check out the new episode of Unredacted tonight. I also have a Substack, and I'll often put out one of the segments as a column as well, as opposed to just a video segment. So if you're one of these people who prefers to forward columns to people, check out my Substack. It's substack.com/@realleecamp, or you can get it at linktree.com/leecamp. But yeah, if you haven't, a lot of people didn't, or not a lot of people, but fewer people noticed this last episode 4 of Unredacted tonight. I think honestly, it's because we accidentally had more curse words in it, and YouTube has stated that, like, I think if you say the F word more than like once or twice, they kind of stop recommending your video to anyone. So I hope you'll look it up if you haven't caught it. I'm going to put the link here in the chat to Unredacted tonight. Also, please check out my podcast. Oh, and some more news. The latest episode of Unredacted tonight is also a podcast. I'm putting it on the Just Comedy podcast. I told you guys about that. It's also at linktree.com/leecamp. But yeah, look up the podcast, give it a 5-star rating, really helps. And if you're looking for this live stream as a podcast, on Apple Podcasts, it's called Moment of Clarity. On Spotify, it's called The Lee Camp Show. And yeah, linktree.com/leecamp. I will see you Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Unredacted tonight, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.